how to spell it. So I want to thank all of you guys for coming out tonight to learn about the ballot measures and other issues. First, although we hope no one in this room is in need of a bail bond anytime soon, I'd like to thank Bail Bonds for being a sponsor of this event. Matt and Sharon Sadler are fearless when it comes to getting involved in the community, and we thank them for their endless support. Yes, thank you. All right, who are we? This event has been put on by the Educational Committee of GCON, plus the many volunteers and members that stepped up to help. We thank you. We couldn't have done it without the willingness and dedication of all the GCON members and of the great community leaders. What is GCON? You can see the GCON banner hanging in the background over there. It stands for Grassroots Conservatives, and we have our finger on the pulse of Pahrump and other state and national issues. We realize that being an ostrich is no longer an option when it comes to local, state, and national issues. Our members attend meetings and events and learn what needs to be done to make a difference. We are neighbors helping neighbors. Why are we here? Recently, I attended a BOCC meeting that literally had over 1,500 pages of backup that I would need to read in order to understand each agenda item and what is being voted on from just that one meeting. We are inundated with onerous rules, regulations, and policies at every level. That particular BOCC meeting ran over 10 hours long. It's easy to see why there's no real incentive for any of us to attend the meetings, and sadly, it seems that's the purpose. Everywhere we turn, we must educate ourselves in order to keep Pahrump and Nevada from being Las Vegas or California.
Yes.
That brings us to the reason why we are here. Many of us speak up at meetings and urge the Planning Commission or the Board of County Commissioners to think before they vote for something. These boards rely on staff to get their recommendations for approval or denial, and often the staff is overwhelmed with work or maybe just don't care. Whether we are better researchers or just have more time than others might make sure someone isn't just dressing up a pig to bring it to Pahrump, we're not afraid to look at the things logically and answer the basic questions that often seem to be ignored. How does this benefit Pahrump? I don't know why they don't ask that. But. Will the quality of life change here if this gets approved? Will my taxes go up to approve this for the long term? Having attended many meetings of various groups, we are often asked, how did you know about that? Where can I find out about that? How would anyone begin to know where to look for this information? In fact, we recently learned that 84% of Nevadans do not know about these ballot measures, what they're about, or even their existence. Always remember, when the public can be ignorant, the politicians win. Tonight, we'd like to share some points with you on some very important upcoming ballot initiatives on the general election in November. It's true that most of these are Nevada initiatives instead of local ones, but make no mistake, the state issues always filter down to the local level. Our goal is to help everyone in this room become a little bit more informed when it comes to the general election ballot in November. We're here to share information and research with all of you. We urge you to do your own research so you can decide on your own what to believe. The conclusions that we have are not the opinion of GCON, but they're the result of individuals taking the time to study the research, ask questions, and unwind the footprint of twisted roads and laws that led to the opinions shared tonight. Again, please do your own research, but here's a warning. Once you get started diving into the cesspool of politics, you cannot unsee or unlearn what's going on here. And that's exactly why more people need to be informed and get involved. We are asking that you hold any questions until after all the speakers are done. At that point, we'll direct you to visit the various information tables to learn more. So with that, we're going to get started real quickly with a little civics lessons. I know that you probably really are excited about that. All right, do amendments to the Nevada Constitution have to be approved twice before enactment? It's a little bit confusing. There are two ways the Nevada Constitution can be amended. The first requires 2 votes of approval by the Nevada legislature and then 1 by the voters. The second requires 2 votes of approval by the voters. Article 16 of the state constitution requires an amendment proposed during a legislative session to be approved by 2 consecutive legislatures. The process requires an election to pass before the second approval, and because the Nevada legislature meets only an odd number of years for their regular sessions, sometimes that takes quite a while. Article 19 of the state constitution allows citizens to circulate a petition to gather signatures in support of a change to state law or the Constitution. If a sufficient number of signatures are collected, a majority of voters must approve the proposed changes in 2 consecutive elections. Only 18 states allow citizens to initiate constitutional amendments, so I guess we must be lucky that we're one of them that does. There are 3 types of statewide ballots: a constitutional amendment, an initiative petition, and a referendum of active law. In the constitutional amendment, to be placed on the November ballot, supporters had to obtain, and this is for this year, at least 102,362 signatures by June 26, split evenly across the 4 congressional districts. That's a lot of signatures to get. And so the fact that you're seeing some of these on the ballot today that had to gather those signatures, somebody really worked hard for that. And we're all very, very fortunate that they did, if they're ones that we like. So once they get their signatures and they get them turned in and they check them all, if the measure succeeds on this ballot, it would return to the ballot in 2026. If it's passed, then the language gets added to the state constitution. Just as a side note, there is a Legislative Council Bureau that basically takes the laws that are passed and they check them and rework them to make sure they're not in conflict of the existing law. And sometimes what you originally saw that you voted for gets changed drastically. So you always have to be careful when you're voting for some of these things. All right, I'm not going to tell you that many of these questions that we're going to talk about today are riveting, but it is our job to at least make the effort to learn what they're about so we can make an informed decision. Without further ado, Tammy Pittman is going to come and speak about question 1, Board of Regents. This is a legislatively referred constitutional amendment, which means if it passes, it changes the Constitution in some way or another.
Like Karen said, it's a legislatively referred constitutional amendment. So it's gone in 2021 and 2023. It was already approved by our legislature. So the final step is us this November. And if we voted it in, it will change the Constitution. Ballot question 1 proposes to amend the Constitution to remove the constitutional provisions governing election and duties of the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents sits over the state and universities and authorizes the legislature to provide by statute for the governance of the state universities and the funds that fund those universities. So you have to go back in time to figure out what this how this started. The Board of Regents came through the Nevada Constitution back in 1862. Each state was given 30,000 acres and territories as well. 30,000 acres, and they could sell that land or they could build on that land and build, but they had to build universities, higher education that has to do with agriculture and mechanics, so like engineering. And that's obviously morphed over the years, but that was what it was set to be. So they had this pot of money, and that money is supposed to administer these schools. Well, giving the legislature that money and having to have everything approved every time was onerous. So they set up us voting and electing a Board of Regents. And it was placed in the Nevada Constitution to oversee the creation and running of those institutions. They would have access to the money without having to go to the legislature. The Nevada Constitution provides that funding derived from the state of Nevada under the Moral Separate Fund and is separate and dedicated for the benefit of the departments of the state university. And if any amount of the separate fund is lost or misappropriated to neglect or any other reason, the state of Nevada has to pay that money back. So, question 1 clarifies and modernizes the current Constitution. However, it leaves loopholes that would give our legislature an opportunity to change maybe this time or in the future how that money is administered. Right now we vote on our regents. Do you remember the last actual election, we voted for a regent, we take away that say. So question 1 proposes to remove the constitutional provisions that govern the election and duties of the Board of Regents and its control and management of the affairs and funds. What this means is it will remove the constitutional provisions that govern the election of the Board of Regents and the duties of the Board of Regents, which includes the control and management of the affairs and funds of the university. Can you imagine what the legislature could do if they had a choice where that money was going? So I'm not going to get into the whole thing, because this is quite long, but I will just let you know that they rewrote it with loopholes so that in the future they could change it. And so at this point, while it does need to be updated, it's not updated without loopholes. They gave themselves an out where they could potentially change it differently and make the regents appointed eventually, or elected and appointed. And of course, if they've appointed them, who are they going to appoint? Somebody that they have control over, and they would sort of be being a puppet. So that is unfortunately what could happen. The legislatures, they say, well, right now the Board of Regents can, sort of pull the wool over our eyes, and it's not like the legislature hasn't done that a million times. They're calling the kettle black. So basically, it's saying the state legislatures feel that they are the only ones that are capable of governing everything, and we certainly know they never focus on individual personalities ever. So, it could be a dangerous process. While it could be updated, and it really could require some updating, they didn't do it properly, and if we vote on this, we're going to leave ourselves open to having this money that was set aside for a very specific purpose at the mercy of our legislatures. Though they would have to use it for the schools, they could use it at their discretion. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Question 2, pardon me?
Not for appointed or elected.
That's correct. There are no background checks for appointed or elected candidates. Thank you, Tammy. The next ballot measure, measure 2, is about revising the language for mental illness, deafness, and blindness. Nancy Blackstone, you're up.
Good evening. Karen said we're supposed to say something fun, so I'm going to keep this really short. This one, it proposes to amend Section 1 of Article 13 of the Nevada Constitution, and revert back to what she said, replacing the term institutions with entities, revising the description of persons who benefit from entities fostered and supported by the state from insane to persons with significant mental illness, blind to persons who are blind or visually impaired, and deaf and dumb to persons who are deaf or hard of hearing. Anybody relate to that? And adding entities for the benefit of persons with intellectual or developmental disabilities to the types of entities that shall be fostered and supported by the state. There are no amendments for this measure, and if it was passed by the 2023 legislature, if it's approved by the voters in 2024, it will be effective. So I will read you the new thing. I'm sorry, I forgot. We have documentation for all of this, so if you have questions or concerns, come to the table after the presentations, and we'll take care of that. So the new one will read, entities for the benefit of persons with significant mental illness, persons who are blind or visually impaired, persons who are deaf or hard of hearing, and persons with intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities, and such other benevolent entities as the public good may require, shall be fostered and supported by the state, subject to such regulations as may be prescribed by law. So it's basically just updating the verbiage, and they did add a demographic. So any questions, come see us at the table.
Did we run out of the inventory of those? Thank you. Okay. All right, next up, I am here, and I'm going to talk to you about question 3, ranked choice voting. I think it's probably the most important ballot question that we have coming up. And I know you're just waiting for this riveting information. So this was passed in the last legislative session, the last voting time that we had a couple years ago. And if it passes this time, it'll be part of our Constitution. There's a lot of dark money behind it. The Democrats nor the Republicans like this. Its elites would like to control who can be elected. And the reason why the different parties, the Republicans or the Democrats, don't like it is because they lose control of having party candidates that they can put forth. There are two parts to it. The first part is considered an open primary. Some people call it a jungle primary. And in that, anyone from any party can run. Anyone can vote for anybody in those parties. Unfortunately, and that's not all the offices will fall under that. Like any of your local elections, no, they're going to go to the regular types. So we're going to have different types of voting going on at the same time. So I'm going to explain a little bit about how this works, because I think somebody who was it mentally insane? Is that the new word, or what is it? No, okay, all right. Mentally something off came up with this. So the group that we're with here, we do an awful lot of research. And so the first thing that one of my fabulous researchers did is she pulled the 2022 state ballot, because what passed then is exactly what has to pass now. So we looked at that to see what the verbiage was on it, and quite frankly, it's enough to scare anybody. But so we have a plurality versus a majority. Majority means more than 50%, not just 50% plus one. For example, if a board has 7 members, majority means at least 4, in this case, which is more than half of 7. The Electoral College is a majority vote. A plurality outcome is one that receives the greatest number of votes, not necessarily a majority of the votes. It's an amount of votes that is greater than any other amount within a total, but not more than half. Plurality voting is simply ranking candidates in order of their vote tally and selecting from the top the number that need to be elected. For example, in the Philippines, a candidate won 39% of the votes, which was well short of an absolute majority, but more than any other single candidate. This is plurality voting. Let's see where that would be a problem. Okay. The expected wording on the ballot, this group went to great measures to read what was proposed, because when they fill out a petition for it, they come up with their own language. So they can say, we're going to have monkeys eat bananas and elephants eat peanuts, and then the actual thing would be, there's no animals at all involved, this is going to happen. So we read the text of what they proposed in their petition, and as we said earlier, it will again go back to the Legislative Council Bureau, and they will make a decision on what stuff they'll leave in and what stuff they will take out. So we went through and made quite a lot of comments and figured out things that they did, went back and forth. We were all trying to figure out what their goal was, what they were trying to do. And we actually prepared quite a nice little, this is what it says here, and this is what we think they were trying to do here. We spent a lot of time on it because there's a lot of information on that. All right, so the expected wording on the ballot, and I do use that loosely, expected wording, shall the Nevada Constitution be amended to allow all Nevada voters the right to participate in an open primary election to choose candidates for the general election, in which all voters may then rank the remaining candidates by preference for the offices of U.S. Senators, U.S. Representatives, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of State, State Treasurer, State Controller, Attorney General, and state legislators. Notice no president or vice president, no locals, no justice of the peaces, no commissioners, none of that is part of this. So some of the pros and cons were really too many to list, but the pros that the proponents discuss are simply, they say it makes it fair. my favorite word, fair, for everyone to get to vote during the primary, regardless of their party, and that the process will be easy and fair. The cons, well, first of all, the wording doesn't belong in the Constitution. It is written like a statute with such detail it would take at least 4 years to correct something that doesn't work. Part of the fiscal impact of this passes is to spend money to retrain voters, purchase new equipment, and have mailing costs increase with the thicker ballots. The amendment applies, as I said, only to certain partisan offices and not county or municipal ones or the United States President or VP. Think how confusing it will be to vote for one person in the primary, yet vote for multiple people in the general. Independent voters have voiced their displeasure that they cannot currently vote in our primary in Nevada. And I think this is where the individuals, and all the money is not in the state. All the money that's come in, it's not coming from the state. It's all out-of-state money, which should tell you everything you need to know. But independent voters, for whatever reason, they choose to be an independent voter. Just like I choose to be a Republican or someone else chooses to be a Democrat. They made the choice not to be an independent voter. They don't like, and I know I have a lot of friends in this audience that are independent, so I'm not singling you out. I'm just telling you, it could have been a decision to do it because you don't like the parties, and most of us don't. But independent voters have voiced their displeasure that they can't vote. So our primary that we currently have is only for the 2 major parties, and those who are registered as belonging to one of those parties. When independents made the choice to register as an independent, they made the choice to register for their party. I cannot register to be a Republican and expect to go vote for a Democrat in the primary, because I registered as a Republican, and the same thing holds true for the independents. If you don't know, independents have their own conventions where they nominate candidates to be on a general election ballot, so they get to choose. They just want to play in our sandbox and in theirs too, and that's probably not the good thing to say. So everyone has a choice to register for whatever party they support. You just really can't have it both ways. Additionally, independents now have to run on the primary to be allowed in the general election. So think about that. Right now, the independents really actually have an advantage. It might not be a big one in their mind, but they go to their convention, they decide which candidates that they're going to put forth in the general election. They get to bypass the primary, go just right over to the general election. And what that basically means is while the Democrats and Republicans are duking it out for positions between the 2 parties to who's going to end up going to the general election, the independents over there are having pina coladas and saying, see you in November, and they don't have to even deal with that. If this happens, they will probably lose their voices even more because most people will not know who they are. They're not going to be someone that's going to be supported as heavily as one of the major parties. The multiple rounds of tabulation for these votes cannot even begin until every ballot is processed. That means in some elections, some of the ballots could start getting processed a little bit early. There's a deadline for it. I know our clerk's office knows all about that. But in this one, how can you tabulate what you're going to do until you get every single ballot in? Many of the elections that have taken place take up to 2 weeks before they even get an announcement, some even longer. So the 2 parts of this measure, top 5 open primary, is just for the named partisan races that I told you about earlier. All candidates for a named race, regardless of whatever their party affiliation is, are going to compete against each other. And the voter votes for only one candidate, one person, one vote. That's the primary. The top 5 winners will go on to the general election ballot. Ranked choice voting will be used only in the general election, not the primary, to determine the winner of the races for those that were named partisan positions. One person, 5 ranked choices. Now you have to remember that because many states that have this open primary had flooded the election with one party or another. Yep. You have a very good chance of having in your general election all 5 candidates be from one party and not the other. And I don't care if it's my party or your party or another party. That's not how I like to see our elections run. Especially in California, they've done an awful lot of manipulating to do that. They will throw support behind someone who they think is the weaker candidate, knowing that they can't win. In this, they also don't have to declare their party, or they can declare their party, but there's no vetting. So currently, if I'm a Republican and I want to run for office, and I don't like anything about elections, don't get me wrong, I think it's slimy, it's money everywhere, you gotta raise money, and like, why am I raising $3 million for a job that pays $100,000 a year? But regardless, the parties themselves, in the good old days at least, looked for people that matched the ideals of the party. That's what they were looking for. In a situation like this, you can have individuals say they're a Republican, say they're a Democrat, and they don't support anything with the ideals because there's no party vetting. There's no party vetting. All right, ballot exhaustion occurs frequently, and that's the process when a ballot is cast, but it doesn't count toward the end election result, either by a misvote, an overvote, or not choosing to rank all 5 candidates. This usually takes several rounds, delaying results. As I said, the Legislative Council Bureau can make adjustments after this is passed up until July 1st of 2025. This is done to make sure that the initiative does not conflict with other laws, but it has the potential to change some of the original wording, and the new wording will now be in our state constitution, and you will not get a chance to vote for this wording. If you don't know, every state that's had this put in has either worked to get rid of it or done something so it's not happening. Alaska used it in their last election. That election didn't even have the ink dry on it, and they were already starting petitions to get rid of it. There's only a couple of states that use ranked choice voting for the whole state. A lot of the ways these insidious laws take place is they go for a city, like Minneapolis. So Minneapolis can have ranked choice voting. Doesn't mean all of the state has it. So they start in little pockets and attack the liberties that way. The funding that has come in, as I said, has been extremely, extremely high. They have had Soros money has come in, and I don't really need to say more than that. Okay. These are just some bullet points for you to think and remember, and at the desk we will have these so you can share this with your neighbor. I actually call ranked choice voting elite choice voting because it puts elites in a better position to influence and manipulate elections. I also have a shirt that says vote no on question 3, and question 3 is for losers, because that's what I think it is. I mean, nobody wins when you have that. It's funded by dark money, left-leaning outside groups. It'll cost more money. Who wants to spend more money on our elections? Ballots printed will be bigger and cost more to mail. You're going to ask, well, why? How is that? Because each one has to have, instead of saying, let's pick, here's these candidates, you need to pick the top 5, put them in order. Now they have it goes on and on and on, and every single one of them, except for our local ones, will have to do it. It's just going to take a whole nother thing. And there's new software that has to be installed, and the software has to be updated. Everyone has to be trained on it, and it's just going to take a lot of money that we should be spending on somewhere else. The ballot counting software, no surprise, is going to be difficult to audit. There is no really quick way to confirm the accuracy of the computer processes involved, which is why in a ranked choice voting election in California, a data entry error went undetected and the wrong winner was certified, and that individual served in that position for a few months before somebody went, oopsies, you better check that. So it's just not good. It will be very expensive and difficult to do a recount. Right now, if you're doing a recount, you get the ballots, you run them through, you're like, okay, 40 for George, 20 for Sam, George won. You have to go through the whole process all over again to determine who the winner is. Liberal mega donors are buying elections this way, and that's what they want to do, which I am definitely not for. Instead of each ballot having only one candidate to count, each ballot's going to have several candidates to count within each race. The bigger the ballot, the more time it takes to scan. So if anybody's worked in the elections and had the privilege of going and watching them do the tabulation process, if it's a bigger ballot, it's just everything could go wrong. It's just much bigger, much longer, it takes more time to do. People feel that our ranked choice voting is going to disenfranchise voters who are going to find it too burdensome to participate. The ballots are longer, it takes more time for voters to complete, it'll create delays and longer lines to vote. Gosh, why would they want longer lines to vote? Because they don't want you to vote. So really, again, why are they doing this? Another thing is ranked choice voting forces voters to research multiple candidates to know how to rate the candidates. So instead of you saying, okay, I know a little bit about this one and this one, I'm going to choose between those couple because they're, you know, I know something about them. Now you have to research all 5 of them because you don't want to put somebody in that is not following your ideals. So how many people are going to do that? Okay, I rest my case. Ranked choice voting also prevents voters' ballots from counting completely if they don't rank all the candidates, if they incorrectly give one candidate all their votes, or if their second choice, etc. candidate gets eliminated early on. They will lose their opportunity. There will be absolutely no hand counting of those ballots. There's no way they could hand count those. I think some of the mail ballots will need extra adjudicating, which you're going to have to look at a little bit closer, because now you've got, instead of, you know, one thing on there, you're looking at all the little circles and squares and what's been scratched. I would not want to be the clerk. It's also very difficult for certain people with disabilities to vote because it is so complex. It's very, very difficult to understand. So how it works, basically, all candidates for an office would run in one combined primary. As I said, party affiliations may or may not be listed on the ballot. The election is open to all registered voters, including non-partisans. Top 5 vote getters would move on to the November general election, which means that it's entirely possible for all 5 of them to be from one party, which I said earlier. November election, the voters would then rank those candidates by preference. If a candidate receives a majority of the votes, he or she would be elected. But things get more complicated if no one wins outright. In that case, the 5th place candidate is removed. The votes he or she received would be redistributed to the candidate whose voters selected as their second choice. If a candidate then receives a majority after the second round of counting, he or she wins. If there isn't a majority, then the 4th place candidate, after this round of voting, is knocked out. The second choice selection of his voters gets redistributed, with the exception that the voters who already have their second choice counted will now have their 3rd choice moved to the remaining candidates. Is anybody thinking this is a good idea? Yeah, you'll see in just a minute how bad it is. In a typical ranked choice voting race, nearly 1 in 20 voters improperly mark their ballot in at least one way. Excuse me. The rate of one type of improper marking, which is called overvoting, is 14 times more likely to occur on a ranked choice voting race than a non-ranked choice voting race that appears on the same ballot. So we're going to do something in just a minute here. I just want to share with you, this came from Minneapolis, because Minneapolis does this stuff. They produce, and you can see it at our table too, but they produce like right, wrong. They produce how you're supposed to do it. Even at that, people don't get it. So it's going to take an awful lot there. At this time, I would like everybody that filled in a ballot to come on up here. Come on up, you filled in those ballots. We're going to show you a scientific experiment. You filled in a ballot and voted for the pizza toppings. Come on up. Come on, come on. Oh my gosh. Are you shy or what? Marilyn, did you get one? Did you get one? Come on up. Come on up. A lot of cheese lovers here. Okay. 14,
One person here has 3 ballots in their hand.
Dan, take a ballot. Take a ballot. Somebody has 3. I need ballot on cheese first.
Mushroom mushroom. So, any comments about that? All right. Okay, so mushroom is out, and we're going to keep rolling along. Let's go with the number 2. So each of you guys, well, you can sit down. You might be pulling people. Okay, the second choice. Put your people in the lines of the second choice. Oh, well, then you better hang out with her. If you have mushroom for the second one, your vote's lost on them because mushroom's out. Yes, that is. Yeah. Okay, please put your line, go down the line. Guys, listen for a minute. Okay, put your line, look at your ballot. Your second choice, you need to move to the line that is your second choice. I want to see what this is. I want to see your second choices. If you picked mushroom as your second choice, you're out. You can go to your third, that's right. You can go, if you pick mushroom, you can go to your third, but not yet. Just stay aside. Go wait over there. Just wait, just wait. Pepperoni, I'm gonna put them both in first choice, and ballot's gone. Okay, what are our counts? I want to see our counts on this next round. Deborah liked pineapple for her first choice, mushroom for her second choice, and by golly, she don't let anybody win but pineapple, so she picked that for her third choice. So her whole ballot, Go sit down, you're done. I want you to know this isn't exactly how it works, but we wanted to show you how confusing it would be even if you understood the rules. Clearly this shows that. Okay, so you have 12, you have how many? 8, and you had 1? Okay. At this point, I would declare pepperoni the winner because they have more than 50%, and that means all these people in these other lines lost. So even if their first choice wasn't chosen, or their second choice, or their third choice, they're done. So thank you guys for participating. I hope you understand how bad this is going to be. That was children. There are new packs that are coming in every day, and right now, one has pre-booked more than $9.4 million in ad buys in Las Vegas, Reno, and on satellite to start running from September 10th through Election Day. Just because they pre-booked does not require them to buy the ad, but it certainly tells you that you've got money up front to spend. When you see these ads coming and they have like the typical pharmaceutical ads where all the side effects that kill you list down here, and they've got somebody dancing around in a forest of lilies. Know that these ads are going to come out. Their job is to influence you. This is really a horrible idea, bless you. And if you did not understand that from all of this that went on and the other stuff that said, I am happy when this is through, you come and chat with us at our table down there, and I will convince you in some way that I can. So, thank you very much. This is like something a third grader could read, so it was right up my alley because I didn't want to read anything real technical. Look for it, read it, and share it with your friends because it's really, really worth it.
Could you tell us again what that is, please?
I'm sorry, what?
The name of it again.
I'm sorry. And I'll have it at the table. The case against ranked choice voting. And this gentleman has been featured in fact, we saw him, he was at Protect the Vote, wasn't he, Jason? Yeah. He goes everywhere to talk about this, and the book is really thin. You're ready for this question. Come on down. This one's going to be removing slavery as punishment for crime.
Did you know that if you did background checks on these Congress, about half of them wouldn't pass? Isn't that the truth? Number 4 is wanting to change the Constitution of Nevada because some people don't like the word slavery. When you hear the word slavery, what do you think of?
Human trafficking.
You know, yeah. But the definition of slavery is the condition in which one person is owned as property by another and is under the owner's control, especially in involuntary servitude. So it's not a black person tied to a post and somebody whipping him. That's what most of us see in our minds when we hear slavery. Slavery is not color. It has nothing to do with it. Back a few years ago, when I joined the Army, actually about 40, 50 years ago, when I joined the Army, I became a slave. Because the Army could do whatever they wanted to do with me. Okay, they wanted me to charge that hill with a machine gun, they could order me to do that. They didn't want to call you a slave, so they called you a GI, which was government issue. You were owned by the government. And any veteran in here will tell you that's exactly the truth. Okay? Prisoners are slaves because they don't have their own say-so on what time they could go eat or sleep. Their day is regimented right to that, so they are slaves. And what some people want to do is take the wording out of the Constitution that calls the prisoners, or not, what they want to do, I'll read this to you, it's kind of crazy. There shall be in this state neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. All right, that makes sense. Then this part they want to take out is otherwise then in the punishment for crimes whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. So I think basically what they're taking out is they want to take out the prisoner part. Over 50% of the states in the United States use prisoners to do work details. And most of them, they volunteer. They're not forced to. Some states do, but most of them don't. About half of the states that use them don't pay them. The average pay for a prisoner when it's used to do either city work or county work or whatever, the average pay in the United States is about $1 an hour. You know, I wish that we would do that here because we could use some prisoners out helping repair our roads. So the big thing is with me is that we've had a constitution for about 155 years. Is that right?
Yes.
About 155 years with this wording, and it's been just fine. And now all of a sudden they want to take some words out just because it talks about slavery. I don't think that's necessary. That's just my personal opinion. If you want to talk more about it, I'll be over there afterwards.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. So do you want to hear something really interesting? There are about 189 county employees that make over $100,000 a year in salary and benefits. There is a fabulous website, it's called transparentnevada.com. It's an excellent way to look into what we are paying for government workers. You can search by county, job type, or even how much per person is taken to pay these salaries. And it hasn't been updated since 2021. I think some of the rules changed about posting this information. You can only imagine who decided that was a good idea. TransparentNevada.com, and it has these annoying ads that just fly all the time, but there's really good information there. I'm going to share this information from Nye County for 2021. This is a summary. For 2021, our population here was 50,096. Total number of county employees were 670. Full-time employees were 456. Median pay for full-time year-round county employees was $62,000. Median pay and benefits for full-time year-round county employees, $94,000. Total county employee compensation, the payroll then was $49,217,000 plus. Total county employee compensation cost per resident, hold on to your seats, $982. So $982 went out of each one of our pockets to help pay for some of this. I'm not saying that we should operate with nobody here, but when you look, our community table where Tammy will be sitting back there, there's a list of the salaries that they make, and it's to me, it's pretty grotesque. $244,000 for salaries, benefits, longevity pay. They're really high, they're ridiculously high, and they're not gonna get that in another market. We also ran a little study for some of the positions, so you can see county by county what that position makes. I know that all counties are not alike, but I know that it's something that Tammy's been working on, trying to get them to compare the jobs in other areas, so we're actually pricing it well for our cost of living and for what the job entails. I know that's not gonna happen. All right, summary for Clark, I'm just gonna do this quick comparison. They obviously have a lot bigger population. The more population you have, it'll bring the cost down, but they have 2.265 million people there. Clark County, God bless them, had 13,354 county employees. 6,974 of them were full-time year-round. Median pay for them was $75,000. Median pay and benefits for full-time year-round was $108,000. Total county employee compensation in 2022 for Clark was $880,977,549. Their total employee cost compensation per resident was $388. So ours was $900, theirs was $388. And again, it's not their fault or our fault, they have more people. But we are spending a lot for employees here. So make sure you stop by the committee tables and talk to them and find out what some of those tax dollars are going. The list is pretty interesting. Go to transparentnevada.com, look at it.
That mushroom thing, that was tough. So, this is Senate Bill 428, and this bill proposes to exempt diapers from sales and use taxes, analogous taxes. If approved, diapers will be exempt from taxation from January 1, 2025 through December 2050. The bill specifies that diaper includes any type of diaper intended for use by a child or an adult, including without limitation a disposable diaper. So, the verbiage, this is fascinating, I know. Section 10, Chapter 372 of NRS is hereby amended by adding thereto a new section to read as follows. In administering the provisions of Section 56.1 of Chapter 397, Statutes of Nevada, 1955, which is included in NRS as NRS 372.283, the department shall construe the term diaper to mean any type of diaper intended for use by a child or an adult, including without limitation a disposable diaper. Section 11, I'm going to skip that part. I'll read it to you. In administering the provisions of NRS 372.287, the department shall construe the term diaper to mean any type of diaper intended for use by a child or an adult, including without limitation a disposable diaper. So as fascinating as all that is, if you have questions, burning concerns will be at the table.
So one thing I thought was interesting in looking at that diaper tax measure is they sent fiscal impact requests to each of the counties and some cities to see what it would be, because you're taking, diapers are not cheap. So believe it or not, someone's figured out how many diapers they sell, how much tax they would lose. There were a number of counties that didn't bother to reply what their fiscal impact would be if they lost that tax revenue. Nye County was one. We don't know how many dollars we'll lose. if there were no taxes on diapers here. In addition, some of the ones that did respond, I mean, there were millions. Like, I'm gonna lose $5 million for not getting taxed on diapers. I don't know about you, but if somebody cut $5 million out of my budget, I would be a little bit upset. And it's like, they don't think about it. They just don't think about it. So it's just like, will there be an impact? Yeah, we'll lose $5 million. Okay, next. So I think it's a good idea because I think it's something that needs to be done in some sense, but at some point that fiscal impact needs to be considered. Nancy?
That's a great point, but you also have to consider how much of that's going to be offset by the benevolent factor. So we're doing a good thing for the most unstable, financially unstable demographics, young families and seniors. If I save $10 on my Depends, I'm probably going to spend that, I don't know, $10 on my cigarettes, whatever. Something that's, I'll buy a can of green beans with that. I'll buy something that's going to be taxable. Okay, so yes, they're going to lose the money on that. Are they going to make it up on the other things that they spend the money they've saved? Because these people are squeaky. And if they can save $10, they're going to spend it on hopefully food, formula, whatever. So there is an offset to it.
Great point. Thank you so much. All right, I wanted to thank the private well owners to this event. They're sitting at the first table when you walk in. Yes, they're fabulous. I highly recommend that you stop by and visit with them. This is a really fantastic group. You can attend the meetings even if you aren't a member. If you join, it's only $40 a year, and that includes a well inspection. And I had my well inspected, and this team of go-getters showed up and they tested my well, and I paid, it was free, but I opted to pay $10 extra for an arsenic testing because I was curious to know what my water was like, and they give you a report. They're really a good group. They help with everything to do with wells in addition to other water issues. Helene Williams, she's gone right now. She also sits on the board of the Water District Governing Board. Just so you know, the Water District Governing Board did something everybody said was impossible. They were able to secure a $10 million grant for water issues. And that's not the most important thing to me. Dan Weeks, the Water District Manager, has promised that it's only going to be used for water, not a drop part, but will be used in the county for anything that the Water District's plan to protect our aquifer and Basin 162. And you can bet $10 million shows up. There's going to be sticky fingers everywhere, and the whole Water District Board are planning on keeping an eye on that. That was actually, out of all the board meetings I've gone to, that was my favorite. Everyone on that board cares about the people, and they're making decisions that will help the community, even if it's a loss of revenue to themselves. So if you have a chance, you can always watch it on Grassroots, which doesn't always work, but it's worth going to. They're really moving. They're doing things that nobody thought they could do, and they've got good leadership there. And just so you know, even if you get your water from a utility, that water actually originated from a well. I know, kind of hard to say. Many people don't know that. The Water District Board is also involved with a really successful cloud seeding project. They netted last year 14,000 acre feet of water. So they have been on the move trying to create water where we don't have any. And I just wanted to let you guys know that they are very, very serious about getting involved in there. We also have, at the community table, there is how to contact the state engineer about Nevada's water. Spaceport, and I keep hearing, stuff about that. But the facility that they build will affect our water. They are building on this side of the hump. When the county's property line moved, and Clark County actually has now a property line on our side, they're using our aquifer, and there will be jet fuel, there'll be all kinds of things. So stop by and pick up a little handout. It just says, write them and say, hey, we don't want it here. If everybody does that, we'd be in good shape. And before I move to the next one, I want to say one more thing. We have something that was produced by a group of forward-thinking individuals. It's called Roadmap to Better Nye County Government. And there are some really interesting interesting ideas in here. You might not like them all. You might not like, you might like them all. But if you have a chance, you can go by and take a look at it. Our community table has one. Mary Ann Hollis' table has them. And we can try and get you other copies if you want. We didn't print all of them, but there's some really good ideas. If we had any of our candidates that were running, or any of our board actually took a look at this and did this, what a difference this county would make. So, take a look at that. Okay, the next one on the ballot is Nevada's Right to Abortion Initiative. Gloria Barrera has been following this issue and letting you know what it's all about. Gloria.
Welcome, and I'm glad you're all here. Okay, I'm going to start out first a little bit talking about what we've got going in the background. I'm going to get into some boring legal stuff, but there's a point I'm going to make on it, and I'll explain it as I go along. So bear with me when we get to the legalese. Okay, in Nevada, since 1990, we have had an abortion law. It's NRS 442.240 to 270. The law was enacted by the people of Nevada through a ballot vote, just like we've been talking about doing, we're going to do on November the 5th. The current law states that abortions are illegal until the 24th week of the pregnancy and must be performed by a licensed physician who practices in Nevada, and after 24 weeks it may be performed only if the physician has reasonable cause to determine it's necessary to preserve the life and health of the pregnant woman. All abortions performed after 24 weeks of pregnancy are allowed if in the attending physician's judgment to be a sustainable survival for the fetus by natural or artificial system performed in a licensed hospital. By performing the abortion, the attending physician shall enter into the permanent record of the patient the facts on which the formation of his or her best clinical judgment affirm the continuation of the pregnancy would endanger the life or greatly impair the physical or mental ability or health of the patient. Okay, so that's kind of all legalese, and that's what we already have. That's what's in the system right now. What they're asking for is an amendment. They want to make a change. And that's why we're going to be voting on ballot 6. The change are listed on paper. It says it's an abortion initiative. However, it's also known by the term Right to Reproductive Freedom Initiative. This amendment would establish changing the right of an abortion until the fetal viability or the need to protect the life and health of the pregnant patient. This amendment would establish that right not to be denied, burdened, or infringed upon by a compelling state interest in protecting, maintaining, or improving the health of the individual who is seeking the abortion care that consists with accepted clinical practices. Okay, we go to legalese. So I want to kind of go through and kind of explain a little bit about what some of these words that they just told us about were. So let's start with compelling state interest. They're saying that means an interest in which is limited exclusively to the state's interest in protecting, maintaining, or improving the health of an individual who is seeking the abortion care that is consistent with the accepted clinical practices. Fetal viability, what are they talking about? They're saying it means the point at which a pregnancy, in the professional judgment of the patient's treating healthcare practitioner, there is a significant likelihood that the fetus sustains survival outside of the uterus without the application of extraordinary medical measures. So I'm going to do some comparison in a minute, but I'm going to go through right now and give you some more legalese, sort of, because I want to explain exactly what this new amendment that they're saying and wanting to put in, which says, in their words, from beginning to end. And I'm going to stress some words, and we're going to talk about them in a few minutes. It says, all individuals shall have a fundamental right to perform or administer by a qualified healthcare practitioner until fetal viability or when needed to protect the life and health of the pregnant patient without interference from the state or its political subdivisions. The right established by this section shall not be denied, burdened, or infringed upon unless justified by a compelling state interest that is achieved by the less restrictive means. So we just talked a few minutes ago about what is a compelling state interest. They're basically saying that that's going to be incorporated in this amendment that's going to go into our Constitution. They're also stating in changes on the fetal viability, because we talked about that right now it's at 24 weeks. You can still have it happen after the 24 weeks if there's a problem with the mother, with her life or her health, and that can be changed, but they're changing this. So I'm going to do a kind of a words in combination of going what's on the law now, what this amendment is trying to say. The first one, of course, when it said the law, it talks about a pregnant woman. This amendment says all individuals. Okay, what do we have? Men are gonna have babies, we're gonna have teenagers, we're gonna have kids, who's on all individual? Okay, we say in the current law, the physician is licensed in the United States, or in Nevada, excuse me, not the United States, in Nevada. This one says a qualified healthcare practitioner. Who does that mean who gets to do it? We're talking chiropractors, we're talking health aides, we're talking midwives, what? We don't know. I mean, it's just like not very clear. Okay, back to until 24 weeks or after 24 weeks if it is necessary to preserve the life and health of the pregnant woman. The amendment says until fetal viability when needed to protect the life and health of the pregnant patient without interference from the state or its political subdivisions. I don't know what a subdivision of the political party or state is. Again, really, really unclear. And then the regular law just stops at that. We don't say anything more about anything. However, the amendment now goes on to say, the right established by this section shall not be denied, burdened, or infringed upon unless justified by that compelling state interest that is achieved by the least restrictive means. And again, we'll go back to that compelling state is an interest which is limited exclusively to the state's interest in protecting, maintaining, or improving the health of the individual. Now, it kind of sounds like it's kind of good, but I'm sorry, why are we going to give the control to the state? Or allow them, just as Tammy was saying earlier, to do something with what they're going to make choices later on. It sounds like a little bit of a loophole to me, because the less restrictive means, well, who knows what that means either. So, kind of like what Tammy was saying, this is kind of really screwy and part of the literature and part of the verbiage and part of what's going on. So I kind of wanted to check this out, as Karen said, we did a little bit of research. So I looked at what's going on in 2024 with abortion and restrictive freedom initiatives, reproductive freedom initiatives, and what's happening. There are 9 states this year that have some sort of similar type of initiative. Some of them literally call it right to reproductive freedom. Some of it, they call it, just like they're here doing in Nevada, that it is an abortion initiative. So, but the question is, if we have 9 states, and those states are Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Michigan, Montana, Nevada, New York, and South Dakota. They're all over. So who's kind of putting some stuff in there? Stuff's gotta be coming of why they're all doing this right now. So I looked into what's happening in Nevada. The November 6th ballot measure, as of June 30th, 2024, has received $9,539,000 to help its passage in November 5th. The donors were the Nevada for Republican Freedom with $4,650,000, so they're local. We have a Nevada Alliance, which is $1,025,000. We have an outfit called the Think Big America. Guess what? That's the Illinois governor putting his oar in the water. Governor J.B. Pritzker, $1 million. Then we have another outfit, I don't know who they are, couldn't find anything about them. They're called the 1630 Fund. I looked them up and they have, doing all this stuff, but there's no way to trace them back. They had another $1 million, $500,000. Then we have Planned Parenthood Advocates for $250,000, and we have Planned Parenthood Federation for $150,000. Then we had some sponsors that are listed, however, there's no mention of donations, and guess what? Vice President Kamala Harris was on that list. The ACLU of Nevada is on that list, Planned Parenthood Votes for Nevada is on that list, Reproductive Freedom from all of Nevada is on that list. We're going to talk about them in a few minutes. The only two people that I found listed that were not people, but organizations that were against this was the Coalition of Parent and Children PAC, and then also Nevada's Right to Life. And again, there was no donations listed or anything about what's going on, but kind of like what Karen was going to say with 30, we're going to be hit by a whole bunch of this nonsense coming on of advertising for it between now and the election. We know that. Oh, please vote. Please talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors. Please vote. I'm not here to tell you how to vote. I'm not just going to give you the facts as I see them, but I want everybody to vote. What happens is, if we don't stand up and let our elected representatives hear our voices, they just do what they want to do. And we have no say because we let them do that. So we really need to vote, and everyone who can vote needs to do that. And there's stuff about registering, if you haven't registered. For myself, my stepdaughter, I can remember when she was 18, 19, and I'm talking about her voting. She goes, oh, I'm not going to vote. I said, why aren't you going to vote? She says, well, it's just like high school. It's just a popularity contest. It won't do any good. It's like, yeah. So there are people out there that have these attitudes, but we are the people. It is our country, but we have to stand up and do something about it. So again, thank you very much. Just remember with this particular ballot, if you're saying yes, you're agreeing with what the ballot question is, and that says you want it. If you say no, that means you disagree with the ballot question, and we are not going to have it. So, thank you very much.
On Tuesday, and we thought this was going to be discussed, but instead he was getting a date to discuss it because bureaucracy works so well. I said little otter, we do have a growing homeless problem here. Unfortunately, there are several individuals that I refer to as grant grifters who have figured a way to get money on the backs of the needy, often bringing people in from other areas. There is word that, Marianne, is it 15 million, the Horsford? $15 million? 10 million. 10, okay. $10 million grant is supposed to be coming from Stephen Horsford's office. Wait for it, for a homeless shelter and soup kitchen.
No way.
This is definitely not what we want to have here. Time and time again, cities have thrown money left and right at the homeless problem, and that's not the answer. Often because the money really never gets to the people. And even if you built a house for every single homeless person, you would not have enough money to do it. I'm not saying they shouldn't be helped. I think I've asked for a comprehensive study to be done, because when we have looked at these grants that are written, there's a lot of money that's gone to salaries, or the catchphrase is consulting fees, and that has to stop. This cannot just keep going. Every board meeting that we go to, it's grants, grants, grants. We recently attended, I'm just not gonna name it, we went to a meeting where there were people that had gotten grant money, and it was really disheartening, because when they went around the tables and asked, what they were doing, we heard a lot of, we were going to, or we are going to, when we get our next grant. They've had it for a year, they haven't done anything, and nobody holds them accountable. So it is something that we're looking at. We implore you to start paying attention to the agendas of the various boards. We'll have a BOCC notebook back there. Tammy Pittman and Marianne Hollis are back there. They can certainly answer questions. It's not that hard to do. And if you don't want to pay attention, just know that you can expect a soup kitchen to show up. Don't forget to stop by Marianne's fabulous map of the stars. She's sitting back there with that. There are some of the hot button places we've been keeping an eye on that come before the boards. We actually took a field trip. Marianne risked her life rolling around in my truck over bumps and whatever. I don't know what's wrong with that woman, because she was screaming, and I'm like, it's like not even an anthill, but it's okay. And we regularly like to do things like this, because what we basically did, both of us, she lives on the south end, I live on the north end, and sometimes I lose my connection. Like, things are going on, and it's not that I'm saying, oh, but that's not in my neighborhood. I really lose a connection of it. So she's made a fabulous, fun map of the stars, not to scale, of all the different areas. And Mary Ann is tireless. She is the one that got me involved in going to these meetings. Like, who is that woman? She's got the Boston accent. She's got her East Coast ways. Yes, I can say that. And she gets up there and she's not afraid to speak her mind. And I admire her greatly for that. And we could all be Mary Ann. They wouldn't like it, but we could all be Mary Ann. I did want to tell you on our little field trip, my personal favorite was seeing up close and personal where the over 460 acres of the Civic Center and accompanying plan sits. It is a nightmare for Mountain Falls and anyone driving down 160 near this area. And it's just a good thing they bought those exceptionally pricey porta potty trailers to have there. That was on our field trip. If you haven't been over there, drive by. They might not look like anything to you. I'm in the convention industry. Those things they can cost $150,000, $250,000. I don't know what they paid for them, but they're sitting out there right now because they needed to have porta potties. Part of our field trip. All right, moving on. One of my favorite measures, this is sorely needed, the Nevada Voter Identification Initiative. Here to explain it all is Jane Davis.
Good evening, fellow voters. My name is Jane Davis, and I'm a concerned citizen. My task this evening is to update you on something called Citizen-Initiated Voter ID Amendment. And that evolved because Nevada's legislature in 2023 was presented 4 pieces of legislation, and they failed to even consider it. So as a result, the birth of Repair the Vote PAC, led by David Gibb, had been born. And he established the movement to preserve voter ID by circulating the voter ID petition. And I want to thank all of you that signed that petition, because that petition had helped us to get this put on the ballot. At the moment, what is happening is that they're redesigning the wording so that it'll be proper and put on the ballot appropriately. Now, because it is an amendment, we will then have to vote again in 2026. The citizen-initiated ballot measure will amend the Nevada Constitution to require ID when voting. A citizen-initiated amendment allows citizens the power to initiate these amendments also to amend state statutes, which are laws, also will allow us to change state affirmations and also veto power for the amendments. Now, 179,000 signatures were submitted, and we were only required to have 102,000. So when the Secretary of State then looked at all of the signatures, 131,590 signatures were approved by the Secretary of State. Our amendment requires Article 2 of the Nevada Constitution to be amended by adding 2 new sections, Section 1B and 1C. 1B requires photo ID. Each Nevada voter needs to present a valid photo ID when voting in person at a polling place during early and same-day voting. It must be current or expired less than 4 years. 70 years of age and older are able to use expired ID, but the information on the ID needs to be up to date and current. 1C requires voter verification, and each Nevada voter that votes by mail-in ballot needs to choose one of 3 blocks that's going to be next to our signature in order to help in voter ID. There is also a flyer in the back at our voter ID table that will give you much more information about all the types of legal valid photo ID parameters. Fiscal ramifications of voter ID have been established by the Secretary of State. He is required to provide this information per NRS 295.015. The Secretary of State claims the impact will require changes to the current process of check-in and polling locations, of verification of mail-in ballots and voter registration. These are his arguments about the cost. The estimated cost will be $6,750. The state and local governments will assume the cost of an alternate ID. Now, an alternate ID is an ID where voters who don't or can't obtain the acceptable form of identification. And that's going to have to be carried by the state and local governments. So that's going to be a tricky one. I don't know how they plan on doing that. There have been a few arguments put forth regarding voter ID. The pro for it allows for free and fair elections. That's the main argument for it. And because when you look at other parameters that we do in the state, ID is required for activities such as banking, flying on an airplane, also for medical care, also for purchasing certain merchandise. The con is they claim it is racist. It disenfranchises the voters, it invades privacy, and costs to obtain the ID. And they also have the old one, it's not democratic. But the pro, especially on the one about being racist, when you think about it, if they are given the privilege to vote, then that means they're accepted as members of a society. In conclusion, due to the efforts of Repair the Vote Pact and bipartisan voter support, they have accomplished an initiative that is a step forward towards strengthening Nevada voter laws. It is now going through a refining word process and then will be placed on the 2024 ballot. I encourage all of us to consider this ballot question and do what's right for our state and for our country. Finally, I wish to mention other points to provide food for thought for all of us. The first one is the United States Senate has delayed the vote on the National Defense Act that includes drafting women. The U.S. House has already passed a similar bill, but it excludes women. But as of today, This is a newsflash. The Senate has resurrected the National Defense Act that includes drafting women, but they're still trying to decide what the role of women will be in the military. But it's coming. So you need to think about all this. All of those of you who have daughters that are of age, military age to be drafted. Second, we have a choice to opt out of mail ballots. I have a flyer at the voter ID table, and if you choose not to have a mail-in ballot, you fill out this particular form, and then you send it to the Nye County clerk. The third one, the state legislature passed NRS 293.705. This deals with election integrity. It deals with the unlawful acts concerning election officials. If any voter is accused of violating this law, it is considered a Class E felony. So keep our tempers in check. What happens with this, and this concerns me because if you go into a voting place and you encounter the worker, if they are cranky or if they misconstrue something that you say, they can slap a Class C felony on you for that. So be very, very careful when you're going into the polling places. Further info on these topics are at our voter ID table, and thank you all for coming. Have a safe trip home.
Thank you, Jane. I'm going to do just a 30-second thing because it's coming up, and then we're going to have John O'Brien speak on Meadoways before we let you guys roll. There's a sales tax question that's headed to the ballot. It's a county tax. I believe it's 0.25%. It's supposed to fund the roads. I know. When my kids were younger, the schools always said they were going to cut athletics and art unless you gave them more money. They never said we're going to cut bureaucracy or high salaries. No. PE, art, athletics. Roads are such a hot topic, and I just kind of want to remind you all, we know our roads are hideous, there's no question about that, but really, if every single person coughed up a big pot of gold, there still's not going to be enough money to fix our roads. Our county is really too big for that, yet, yes, there's been big mistakes made in the past that are slowly, and I do mean slowly, trying to be fixed, but I want you guys to look at your property tax bill and look for the roads category. It'll be near the top. We have zero property taxes are paid for roads here. Before you throw darts at me and think I'm in favor of raising your property taxes, I'm not. But there's a set percentage that each of us pay and that cannot increase. So if they were to fund the roads with property taxes, let's just say for 1%, then that 1% would have to be cut out from other areas. So it's not that they can't, they won't. And I'm personally not in favor of them cutting any more funds from the museum. Thank you, Marilyn. All right. Again, I think too much money is being spent on these pet projects. They can find money for a gun range and a, I don't know, OHV park, throwing dust everywhere, and anything else they can come up with, but they never have enough money for roads. So when you see this, you'll have to make a determination if you really want to vote for this sales tax. I personally have a fiscal responsibility to myself to not give any government any more money until they can show me they can spend well what they can get. Okay. All right, I'd like you guys to welcome John O'Brien, who's our last speaker. He's going to bring you up today on the horrific Meadoways debacle, and I just want to thank John. He's been working tirelessly behind the scenes to fight this. Many of you may have signed a petition against this project, and I am in awe of his tenacity.
Asked to update you on Medi Waste. April 10th, 2024, the planning department slipped into the PRPC, Operational Planning Commission, a conditional use permit to allow Medi Waste to come in. Remember, Medi Waste was turned down in North Las Vegas, Clark County turned it down, Washoe County turned it down. They came here. They came here because our state and this is directly from a board meeting when I came up to publicly speak. You can't do this. I have 17 front page photos in the Grand Valley Times. And each and every one of those was speaking out against what was happening. We have a letter for convenience at our table, a petition if you haven't signed it. First day we went out, we collected 200 signatures in less than 8 hours. Voters signed this because they're dead set against us. First of all, we formed a committee, it's called Concerned Corrupt. When we went to the courts, we had to do a pro se meeting. I myself represented myself only, funded by myself. Last Monday, we appeared in front of Judge Lane. Judge Lane said we did not exhaust all administrative remedy in order to see this disappear. In other words, he's telling us that the people still have a fight. I'm going to quote my political teacher from college. And there's a book out there, it's called Disharmony of Politics. If you've never read it, this year is a perfect example, the perfect storm of disharmony amongst voters. And that disharmony causes people to react. And democracy is very, very slow to react for a reason. Our forefathers created the Bill of Rights and the Constitution to be very slow to repair itself for a reason. They didn't want severe big changes. We today have a chance to put our voices into writing at this table so we can send a letter to MDEP, our governor, and the people who run all of the Department of Resources to tell them we don't want any waste here. First of all, it's not our waste. It's coming mainly from California to start. The 16th BOCC meeting, they stated that 4% of the total annual waste generated by Pahrump would then be their waste disposal waste from outside of our state. According to our laws, the planning department should have sent this directly to the Board of County Commissioners. It's Article 4, Title 8, which was adopted in the early 1990s. It's an NRS statute. The NRS statute basically states that each county has to adopt or amend their own rules and codification of this law. We adopted it, and we basically stated that no entity can bring into our state outside waste unless it's a benefit to our community. There is no benefit. 40 trucks a month are going to arrive in our community bringing waste from outside of Nye County in the state of Nevada. It includes 4% body parts, blood, pharmaceutical drugs that have expired, unused pharmaceutical used in chemotherapy, plastics. They're going to heat these items up in a process called pyrolysis, and they're going to make biofuels. This isn't a medical waste issue, this is a biofuel issue. And they're going to sit there every time they open this oven that they're heating these products up into, they're going to release its alcohol, which has a 5% LEL, lower explosive limit, all the way up to a 50% concentration, upper explosive limit. In the first meeting, he said, well, we're not going to release any emissions. That's not true. The attorney used a lot of very, shady, how do I put it? Smooth talk, okay? Our operation becomes more profitable, more waste we bring in. He stated that he's not a scientist, he doesn't know all the answers. He's not going to mislead us. I mean, this is typical poly talk. I have a letter, I'm not gonna read it. First of all, our landfill is not lined. You cannot accept this type of waste. They stated in the 16 July meeting, they are not required by law to test their byproduct. That means they're able to put into our landfill any byproduct of this pyrolysis process without testing it. And we have this up on our fan to then pollute our aquifer. They're not going to test it. I'm going to give you a case in point. State of Illinois. They took the solid waste from a waste treatment plant and offered it to the farmers free as fertilizer. Those farmers applied the fertilizer for a period of 5 years. There are 550,000 acres of contaminated farmland in the United States, similar to the state of Illinois, where they cannot use any of the food grown for human consumption, even if they feed it to cattle. I should tell you the concern that I have, and you should have, for them bringing this waste into our landfill. Heavy metals, none of these products can be completely broken down because they are not totally consumed in the pyrolysis process. It's up to each and every one of you to prevent this from happening. Please come over to my table, sign a petition if you haven't signed it. There are over 600 voters that have already signed it in Pahrump that represent concerned Pahrump, and I want each and every one of you to come over and be part of that process. Thank you.